Okay, so hi there all. Thank you obviously as well for attendance. Just for those at home as well, so some of the people in attendance have already heard this, but just as a quicker way of introduction, my name is Phil Mercer, so I'm the Solutions Director at PowerOn. So I always say that I'm technical but not the techie, and that's where we have my partner in crime.
Which must leave me as the techie. So my name is Steve Beaumont, I'm Product Development Director at PowerOn Platforms. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for my sins, so working very closely with the cloud data center teams, so I think System Center related and Azure.
So the session that we're just about to go through now, this is really kind of, I suppose, followed on from Ed's session, which kind of really gave us a nice kind of footprint in terms of where the Microsoft kind of vision has been and also is going. Just to really talk around a few pieces of kind of what's new within the Microsoft modern desktop. So we're going to be predominantly looking at some new capabilities in Windows 10, and then really into the actual management and process approach for this. This is touching on some of the highlights, as of course, stuff that you can go into much deeper, and this is really where, some of the actually kind of planning, design, and other exercises are always important around how does this work for you. But I suppose just to kind of initially start, the Windows 10, and importantly for the business side of things in terms of how this is coming together, it's really, I suppose, just kind of talking to kind of where Microsoft is kind of coming at. We're going to see this as a fairly common theme throughout the course of the day in terms of actually Microsoft really starting to, whereas they previously have made kind of great technologies and almost kind of working as independent parts within their own business, they've really been bringing that story together as very much that kind of converged platform. How do we really start to bring the different aspects of making my services run and run effectively? So within the respect to the Windows 10 platform, we see this in terms of four main pillars that Microsoft are trying to achieve, and there are lots of complementary bits, as we see there's lots of components to that. We look at the kind of the whole being more productive. We are going to be demoing parts of this as we go through the day, but this is also starting to say that actually let's release the operating system from, say, the traditional device, introducing elements like Continuum, so really kind of embracing that mobile worker in round of literally have your phone as that kind of portable operating environment that your workplace, that your users can work from. Supporting that with evolutions in their products around things like universal apps, which is really around then having an application that can run independent of the actual hardware base that it's on. It's really more around having that common OS in terms of common core, and then that can run across those different sites. Bringing this in with how they then support it. So, we mentioned that around common different platforms, things like IoT is going to be a really big space as we see this coming through. You see this in the modern kind of users' home already with items like Hive and other bits and pieces from, say, British Gas or others associated to that, where literally you can control your radiator, your heating, your electricity, all from home, Wi-Fi enabled devices, and running that through.
Did you see what Microsoft recently released as a blog post? So this was really cool. Taking the idea of getting something like a Raspberry Pi, putting Windows 10 IoT core on it, so it's a variation of Windows 10, so it's all using that one common core platform. And they've now developed it so you can put it behind a mirror and have a smart mirror. So you wake up in the morning, it displays little logos around whatever it is, has facial recognition, so using all that Windows Hello to say, "Morning Steve," and little highlights of your day in your calendar.
Well, you see, getting to the old Iron Man stage, we see that as well with your IoT devices like that, but also the Surface Hub, HoloLens. For those of you who haven't seen it, absolutely go and look at it. HoloLens is awesome in terms of the technology, but bringing that whole kind of augmented reality and really starting to look at how that is both applied from obviously cool options around having your entire wall as a TV, or if you want a business that maybe do it for design of motorbikes.
You can see me getting up in the morning now, staggering to the mirror, interacting with Windows 10 there, then going downstairs, HoloLens on, wandering around, logos everywhere.
The modern workplace, as it were. But certainly kind of good stuff. But really then, you've kind of seen this aspect in terms of how do I be more productive across different devices, enabling me with the kind of actual kind of modern hardware and approaches of how I interact with those devices. Really then ensuring that actually security is at the core. So this is dealing with the kind of the modern user, but also the modern threat. How we see this in terms of ensuring that those kind of devices or threat vectors that have become more intelligent, really securing right at boot, whether that's being supported in securing credentials. I'm going to see this as well as we go through the day in terms of some of the newer technologies that are also kind of expanding upon this, and then really kind of making sure that actually you can manage this platform. So you've got the ways that around as these platforms are evolving, the management toolings to support you in terms of making sure that this isn't something that's, as a traditional kind of operating system upgrade has been, is a massive, this is going to be a big pain for my organisation to go through. We want this to really start to become a daily business as usual type of activity that you are just managing as part of your day-to-day. So, we do talk around this also, being then around that kind of Converge platform. So we do see this as well, bringing across all the different types. Steve's mentioned there things like the IoT gateways, Raspberry Pi devices and other bits and pieces, all right, going through to the actual medical devices and more kind of advanced. I know, the IoT is a very interesting kind of place in terms of how this sits. But, we were doing some stuff where actually we're at a Oxfam, we were looking at this in terms of they were just presenting at a Microsoft session where they were looking at monitoring water levels and starting to use actual kind of IoT-enabled smart devices to help them do that, how they can then bring real change to front-end kind of activities and services. So in manufacturing, industry robotics and things like that, there was an organisation that basically produces all of the prawns and seafood for some of the large supermarkets, and because they got heavy penalties around kind of if they were ever underweight on their side, they were introducing elements that actually would make a gram difference in terms of their overall 100-gram packages. That saves them millions overall because of manufacturing efficiencies. And we've seen things like lean and other bits and pieces in terms of process, but this is bringing that intelligence and bringing it in a way where you've really got kind of information coming back from sources that you've never had before. So you've got that operating environment starting to really kind of bring you a consistency of approach, engagement with your users, and just kind of new ways of engaging with your kind of consumers, customers, aspects of how you deliver service you just haven't had accessible before. So what does this mean then in terms of also with bringing this kind of new age, new kind of way of doing the operating environment, how would Microsoft kind of going through the process? So we hear this statement of evergreen, it's always the latest version, though the rule for Microsoft was always wait at least until Service Pack 1. That rule doesn't tend to exist anymore, so obviously I was potentially always an advocate of that, certainly when working in the corporate space, ensuring that there was a stable release. Microsoft have effectively started to address this, whereas they kind of had previously elements like technical previews, release to market candidates and other bits and pieces. They've now fundamentally changed the way they are developing the Windows experience to ensure that there is a significant and wide kind of portfolio of people that have actually run through this. Ed mentioned this a little bit in terms of some of these slides where he's talking around that kind of consumer or that kind of effectively specialist system. But just to bring that in terms of what the structure is, so Microsoft starts by having a concept called the Windows Insider. So this is effectively people that have put their hands up to Microsoft and said, I want to be part of the early adopter scheme. So typically, I don't know who would be.
I'm just thinking whether they should rename it for the Brave and the Bold branch.
Or the technically attuned, shall we say, but yeah, this is maybe a nice way of saying it. But yeah, effectively you're going to see expert people that have keen interest in IT, want to actually go out and test these things, and fundamentally will probably try and break it as much as they possibly can, as that is the normal.
That is the thing. This is literally preview stuff. Do not expect to be running this and say, right, we want everyone running the... No. This is for you to get that early opportunity to see what type of things do break, what things you might need to think about. It's a testing platform.
Yeah. So this is really around, you can see this within your IT team potentially using this, but as Steve says, certainly this is not to put on your end devices, because if you've got people out there, it doesn't necessarily have as much reliability when presenting or other things as we've seen on other customer engagement sessions. But yeah, the Windows Insider Preview Bench, very much around being that early dev type of option. We then see this actually then go out to mass. So you've had that kind of technical, early stage adoption side. We then get the current branch. So this was the consumer branch that kind of Ed was referring to. This is basically going out to the mass market, of which there are many, many, many millions of that now in terms of the actual kind of public space and continuing to ever grow. Kind of the quickest growing operating system for Microsoft, as the typical new releases are. But this is really starting to see that actually this is through the consumer update. It is driven by Microsoft, so this is, again, once someone's moved to Windows 10 in the consumer world, they will continue to get these updates, so it's not really, say, optional per se. But it really means that you then get your non-technical users that are actually kind of reviewing this. So the stuff that people just do that a techie wouldn't think of how to even get to that point, this is also going to give that very large, very wide-scale testing side, so ensuring that you get that.
This is that idea that while Microsoft will always release security patches, the cumulative updates that are fixing bugs, the current branches are also about introducing new features, new capabilities, changes to the way that things look and feel as well.
And then what we start to bring through, now that we've actually felt that it's been both technically reviewed at a dev state, but also kind of mass consumer reviewed, you then get to the current branch of business. So this is your enterprise user, this is your kind of 80-90% of most organisations' kind of workforce and staffing. And really this then is then starting to get to a point where I've got my inserter, I've got that kind of period of time that's being tested by the consumer, I'm now going to introduce my ability for the business consumer to have this. We will talk around a little bit and actually show you some of the ways this management of this new Windows update experience is coming through. But you can delay, you can kind of manage this through depending on how quick to be on the kind of consumer or current branch that you want to run through. But fundamentally, we're then starting to see that this is a stable release, it's gone through that testing period, and then is it a period that your kind of business users can come through. Now, where you may not want to necessarily have then the update, because it is a continually updated process, and if you have those very kind of either highly secure or kind of machines that simply cannot be on a potentially any kind of risk or patching or other bits and pieces, Microsoft introduces the long-term servicing branch. So for any of those kind of flight systems or other bits and pieces that need to be on a fixed, stable, non-changing, effectively deployment, then you would effectively subscribe to that, and that is an option then that you can retain for, well, effectively forever if you wish, but effectively periods of time to support you in terms of a long-term kind of managed desktop OS.
I tend to figure that idea of the insider preview, absolutely, for those that need to test the latest and greatest, what's coming out. I run that at home, I want to see the new features, I want to be able to play, I want to be able to give feedback. It's about feedback to Microsoft. Those are the testing ones on the insider. Current branch, it might be a case of we decide, well, actually marketing, they're always after that new thing that might be able to help them do something better, they want digital ink, so we put marketing, for example, on the current branch. And then the current branch for business is for more the masses. So we have a lot longer time scale, they get used to it, they don't get dropped with new features and functionality all the time. And then things like them, so the devices that you use within the manufacturing stuff, they would be on your long-term servicing. They don't need the fancy Windows Hello coming up. They just want something that's solid, stable, doesn't change, gives third parties enough time to develop their applications for the next release. So it's about finding the different fits within your organisation to where these different rings of releases go.
Yeah. So this is where you'll start to see maybe some people refer to these types of, kind of current service branch or CSB or kind of LCS or different things like that in terms of kind of the terminology that's coming through. But this kind of showcases the model that Windows is now moving to. What we do actually also see though as well is, well, how do I actually get Windows to my desktop and manage then what's in? And this is actually just a highlight slide from Microsoft as well, which has come through a little bit kind of skewed on that, unfortunately. But effectively what this is looking at is actually what was the update experience for Microsoft as they were going through upgrades of their operating system environments, whether it be from custom solutions when they were working on Windows 10, managing with MDT and IT, in terms of things like Windows 8, and then really kind of starting to leverage through to their upgrade and update management as we come through. And you see that goes from 80% of the business over a course of a year for Windows 7 to really 95% within 5 weeks when we're doing through to the Windows 10 update.
It's pretty much that idea that as we start to go towards Windows 10, where we are reducing the complexity, the different methodologies that we have now to be able to do in-place upgrades without the wipe and reloads, drops that down significantly. User experience is going up through the roof because they're getting very rapid releases, very easy, they can self-service and look at how they do it. And then obviously the help desk effort and stuff is starting to drop a little bit of an upturn, especially if we go to Windows 10, because it's new. Like anything, it's introduced something brand new, you're going to get questions and stuff around it, but it's not as high as it used to be back in the day when somebody says, my machine's completely broken, fine, you're going to lose everything, wipe, reload and start again.
It's an interesting one, and for those that maybe haven't upgraded to Windows 10 as yet within your organisation, or maybe actually doing it at home, you'll have seen this in terms of potentially your experience when you did go through it as a personal user in terms of some of the changes, because we see this actually introducing new options by leveraging the Microsoft management tools that sit in complement to this, so Windows 10 alongside Configuration Manager and some of the new supporting peripheral kind of tooling associated to that, where actually it was popping up in the bottom kind of right corner saying, would you like to upgrade to Windows 10? Tell me when you're ready. Once you're ready, the user is able to initiate that. So it isn't necessarily now to say, well, it has to be that kind of more traditional I'm going to go either take back the device or we're going to go and physically do the upgrades in terms of what would typically be quite a lengthy process around actually the logistics of managing that across your business. You do have options now around different types of deployment models, and Ed referred to this, in terms of some of the options around provisioning packages and other bits and pieces around how this can work, but actually then giving your users the ability to drive the pace that's actually picked up within your business.
That's the thing. So often we've heard that whole, some users are going, oh, IT have done this to us, they've forced this on me, I didn't want it. And then you get the others, like you say, they're like, I want that new stuff, I use it at home, why can't I use it here, why am I still on Windows XP, for heaven's sake. So having that option, that balance now to be able to say, hey, if you're Luddite, you can stay down here, if you are new and you want all the brave new features and that whole new shiny world, then fine, move at your own pace as such. But IT's still got that control because they can dictate when it's available in the methods and the manners that they want.
Yeah, and this is linked to both the actual deployment and provisioning of the OS, but also then the update and management of this. Whereas in the consumer world, the update is driven by Windows Update Services. By bringing in Configuration Manager to your business, you are able to leverage that control, again, in terms of how the update management. So if we see this in terms of it, if anyone's familiar with Configuration Manager 2012, and maybe is already using, say, the App Store or the Software Center, as it's going to refer to, this is effectively enabling you to provide this as a package or an available software type within your effectively software center. So then via policy, users can request that and then drive that deployment back down onto their operating environment with a relatively minimal actual kind of user kind of blockage in terms of it's not going to turn them off for the next several hours. There is a restart and some of the bits and pieces involved, but effectively, the user initiates that installation, looks to actually drive that policy from the management point or confirm that request to the management point, and this package is pushed down from the localized distribution point, whether using branch cache or physical distribution points there, and then that is effectively delivering that via the OSD task sequence. So all running via, the configuration manager side, but using common things that you'll see before in terms of managing task sequences, if that's something that you're going to use within your business, but then allowing that kind of user control, but still done via governance and policy managed by the organisation. So it's just giving you new ways and starting to introduce possibilities for you that start to leverage an easier side. The nice thing with compatibility, if you're a Windows 7 user today, it is less kind of issues in terms of the move between 7 and 10, common operating core and other bits and pieces. So necessarily that kind of reside, although there's always things to consider with Internet Explorer and other kind of browser compatibility sides as we move up to 11. But fundamentally, this is also then kind of managing into a good standardized type of task sequence, whether you've got pre-sequencing, post-task sequencing, any kind of failure and regression type sides, and just making sure that any kind of standardized apps or services and other bits and pieces are configured and effectively deployed as your base image.
No, you're absolutely right. It's that idea of leveraging the task sequence engine of Configuration Manager, being able to define out the logical steps that you want to do. It could be as simple as just, fine, download the components and do an upgrade. It could be the fact that you say, well, fine, I want to do something like run the user state migration tool. I want to be extra safe and pull off a copy of documents, Excel, Word, etc. to a centralized store. Or I might want to uninstall some uncompatible apps first. So we say, well, actually, we know that this app's got a major problem. We've done our testing. We'll remove it to then install Windows 10 to then update it with a compatible version. So it gives you a lot more flexibility and control in how you want to be able to do that.
So really just kind of summary of this, and then we're going to actually go into a bit more demos, which is always a good thing to be able to show you all actually how this works, is really this is just Microsoft also kind of making sure that as well as them operating and updating their kind of main primary kind of operating environment, multiple different kind of device type profiles, they're ensuring also the management tool is keep up to pace with this. Some of the bits that we are talking around, if you are a System Center user today, it is actually working on the current service branch for System Center, which is currently 1602. But again, a nice piece around if you're, say, a 2012, the update process for that, as long as your environment's healthy, is pretty quick and kind of fairly fast-paced as well. So without really kind of labouring the point maybe more on the slideware, I think it'd be good to actually show a few bits and pieces. So I think we'll hand over to Steve. The main bits we're going to kind of give a bit of a run through is Windows 10, looking at some of the kind of new features that we talked around, helping kind of simplify user credential management by, kind of bringing in via new devices, the biometrics or the kind of the supporting side, a little bit of Katana and the universal apps, and Continuum as a kind of nice play, and then into that kind of management process for this.
Brilliant. So, now the device that I'm on at the minute doesn't actually have Windows Hello installed on it. We could swap devices and pull Phil's nice shiny Surface Book up, but what I do have is Windows Hello on my phone. So if I manage to look at my phone, there we go, just by simply looking at it, it signs me in. So this is a similar experience to the PC side of things. It's like we say, it's that common core across devices. So yes, I'm demoing this on a phone, but that whole same experience could quite easily have been done within an actual PC device as well. So it's using the IR camera to do that not just the infrared, sorry, that whole depth perception, so you can't just hold up a photo and get logged in. It actually has to detect that there is somebody actually there, and they do register against your profile. And on the phone side, it's looking specifically around my irises and making sure that it is me. Now, this is all about the different forms of authentication. That might seem like a very novel or different way of doing it, but that whole perception around, we see the devices with biometrics on it, so I can scan my fingerprints. Again, it's been proven that we can go and get people's fingerprints and make molds of them and do that. It's a different form of biometrics. So this links into a lot of the stuff that's on Windows 10 around the ability to actually couple it with things like the Windows Passport services and the Windows Hello to actually store these credentials and use different methods of doing that. One of the other things I want to show very quickly, especially around the Windows Phone side, is if I swap the projector, is this going to do it automatically for me? Swap source. There we go. So, what I have is my phone. This is my phone in my hand, and this is it doing it to the screen. So on my phone, all I have at present is literally a trackpad. So had I got a mouse and Bluetooth keyboard, let me swap my mouse across to my little docking station. So I have my phone plugged into my little Continuum dock. It then basically turns this into a full-blown PC, in effect. So I can navigate through to my start menu. I've plugged my mouse in now, so hands-free mouse, I can use it, I could have a keyboard, and I can work on it as if I was sat at a PC. We have Word as a modern desktop app. There we go. So we could have slide decks, we can do presentations, we can treat it as if we were just doing that. I have things like the Twitter applications. So it is working as if it is an extension to my workspace, and I can browse the internet and interact as if it was a desktop PC. So no more lugging around big heavy laptops. Yes, there's always going to be some cases where it's not applicable, but in that whole mobile style world where we need to be able to very quickly jump on, do tasks, rather than typing away on a little small screen, it's very easy to plug it in, project it out onto a monitor or a projector in this case, and be able to work much more efficiently. Swap again. Just swap back. Probably should have just done the rest of the demo on my phone, to be honest, shouldn't I? See if we can get back to my desktop. Is that detecting it? So, lovely projector problems. Why is this disconnecting and reconnecting? Just disconnect that entirely. Definitely should have just stayed on my phone for this. Here we go. So, one of the things that's coming along for Windows 10. So, one of the biggest pain problems with Windows 8 was that whole modern store applications, the public store, that you needed a Microsoft ID to be able to go and purchase applications, go get your Angry Birds of the world, or even Microsoft Office required you to have a personal identifiable Microsoft account per user. So Microsoft are making moves in this direction now for this Windows Store for Business. So I can sign in to the administrative side. On the administrative side now, I can start to go and shop, purchase applications. I can do volume purchases. So I might decide I want 200 copies of the TeamViewer remote control app, for example. I can pay with it with different methods, even credit cards or purchase orders, depending on how we've got it set up, which allows us to basically bring them back in to our inventory to choose how and where we want to deploy these, well, not so much where, who we want to deploy these to. So these are a lot of the applications that I've put into our business store. We can have things like the ModGov UK application. We assign these to either individual users, so that when a user goes to the store on Windows 10, have I got the store on my side? Yep. Because I'm logged in with my corporate credentials, and we have it federated in terms of our identity with Microsoft Azure, this isn't going to work today, because literally, if anyone's just been watching, there is a problem with the store at the minute, and they've brought it down, unless they've fixed it. Well, the demo god's going to be on my side today. So there was a problem earlier with the store where it was just coming up with an error for everyone, unfortunately. Now what you can see though is we have this additional tab that is not there on the usual public side. So this is our business store. It looks like Microsoft might have just fixed the problem. Perfect timing. It's a little bit slow. But if I go to my business store, which hopefully isn't affected, then we should get a representation of just the applications that I've made available for our internal employees. However, that is running rather slow today. No, Microsoft still haven't fixed the error, unfortunately. But the business store application would give you an access to just the applications that you've selected and whether they've been licensed or not. You can also take your own internal line of business applications, so these might be universal applications your developers have made, and actually put them into the business store for distribution. So we're using the standard mechanisms of Windows 10 to be able to get your applications out there without putting them on the public store for potentially anyone to be able to access. So, one of the next things I wanted to show as well is around the System Center side. So, obviously System Center and Configuration Manager especially has been around for quite some time. We've gone through various different versions, right back from the SMS days through to what is now, it's even dropped the naming convention, so it's no longer System Center Configuration Manager 2016. It was previously 2012. We now just simply call it Configuration Manager, and we have a current branch version. So this is the 1602 release that I'm on. Now, one of the biggest things that Microsoft introduced with the current branch, and this started in December, is this idea around the Windows 10 servicing. So that very same nature that we have with Windows 10, where we have the different current branches, long-term servicing branches, and that step up that introduced new features, the actual management tool for Windows 10 had to be able to keep up with that. So we introduced the same concept of the current branches in Configuration Manager, that ability to easily drop in new features such as the Windows 10 servicing module and be able to actually move with the management platform alongside the new features that get introduced in the operating system. So in terms of upgrading from 2012 to the new version, it's fairly much a simple in-place upgrade. So it's a case of installing the latest 1511 binaries. So it's important to mention that you must go to what was the baseline install, which at present is 1511. That might change in the future as they alter what will in fact become the long-term servicing branch or the current branch for business, depending on your terminology. Once you are on the current branch, we get this new updates and servicings feature. So this is the ability to actually very rapidly bring in new updates as they're delivered by Microsoft. So you can see that we started on 1511, we then had 1602 pop up in the console. It was basically a case of, hey, there's this new version, do you want to install it? and we can run through actually deciding to do the prerequisites check online. So you click it, it goes away, assesses the database, makes sure there's going to be no problems. Something that we had to do previously manually, back up the database, restore it to a new SQL server, make sure it's all the same collation, run the test manually, look at the output, was we happy? Yes, fine, we'll go back. Took a lot of time, a lot of investment from the maintenance side of IT. Now it's a case of we can click a button, look at the results, should come back all nice and fresh, and then when we're ready, we basically install the update pack, and then that will go in and do the upgrade for you. Very minimal effort, just a case of checking that the actual things are in place ready first. Obviously, always take a backup first before you do these types of exercises, but it means that the new features are delivered. First time that we did this, so we kind of did it, and also we got a pop-up saying that our consoles needed to be upgraded. No more having to push out new consoles. It says, yep, fine, you're connecting to a site that's higher. Do you want to update your console? And then it delivered the new console update down as well. So it's very easy to get onto 1602, which then brings in new features, little things like now we have the ability when we're looking at our different devices, we have little green ticks. Oops. When I actually have my devices, there we go. So we have little things now that are new features that are just rapidly introduced, just to tell us that that machine is actually online and contactable. But talk about the whole Windows 10 side. So that whole idea of the Windows 10 servicing. As me and Phil were talking about earlier, and talking around them current branches, long-term servicing branches, this is where Config Manager starts to take that information. It gives you that idea of, right, when Windows was first released, was looking at the business ready, or what was the current branch for business being 1507, and then it starts to migrate through and says, well, fine, now 1511 is basically the release ready, or the current branch. So that is what should now be deployed to our users that are on the current branch, and we can see the life cycles, which then allows us to decide what our internal release ring should be. So we get an overview of the different devices in the estate. So in this test environment, we've got basically 15 devices, one still lagging behind. So we can target that one explicitly, get it out. But we have our own service plan. So this service plan is where we have defined when do we want our devices and which devices to be on our current branch. So we have a collection of devices. So we basically say, well, fine, we actually want everything to go out on Windows 10. So we want everything to go out on Windows 10 current branch. So we've actually targeted this at everything. However, so there's our target collection. So all our Windows 10 devices would be on the current branch, but our deployment ring is basically the current branch and wait for 30 days before sending it out to clients. So we have this lag now. We have Windows 10 deployed, Microsoft bring out a new current branch. We internally will wait 30 days before applying that current branch to all our devices. You could say, well, actually, fine. We want to make sure that we're on the business ready, or that current branch for business release. We'll wait 60 days after release of that before upgrading our devices, and then they will stay on that ring until the next current branch for business, and then it will upgrade them again. So we get to define when and where and which versions we're actually going to send out the updates to the different devices, and then just keep our eye on it in terms of how well that is deploying. The other side is, these are basically Windows updates now. So the entire package that we download and deploy out is basically delivered via WSUS. So once we've done that initial deployment, which I'll show you in a second, which is where we use the task sequences to stage out how we want that upgrade from a previous operating system or a fresh new build to get deployed, after that, it's treated like a Windows update. We're just scheduling in when and where we're going to push that update out to. So if we're looking at our task sequences, so we have an upgrade to Windows 10 task sequence. We have that logical step of what we want to do. And this is how simple that we streamlined this one down to. We basically want to make sure that we have a certain number of things. So it must have at least 2 gig of RAM, must have at least a 1 gig processor, and it's only being deployed or ran on what is currently a workstation or client OS. We don't want somebody accidentally going and upgrading our server estate to Windows 10. Don't think it's going to work somehow. What we're going to update, so we have this update package. So this is our raw system ISO files basically extracted, and then we're basically going to upgrade. Nothing more complex than that. So yes, you can add in them extra steps. We mentioned, you might say, well, actually, this version of this speech dictation software doesn't work on Windows 10. We need to be on this version first. So we're either going to upgrade that application before we do the deployment, or we'll remove it, do the OS upgrade, and then reapply that application in case it was just an upgrade compatibility rather than application compatibility. So we can add in the various steps and say, well, fine, we want to install this application, choose an application, we will install that application at deployment time. So maybe Flash. Probably not the best one because that's going to be bedded into it, but we can install and we can choose how we configure that upgrade process. Now, I don't believe this is published out to anything at the minute. However, if we said, well, fine, we want to distribute this application out, maybe we want to do this to all computers. However, this is an operating system deployment, so some of the new safety nets that are in Configuration Manager, especially after we've heard the horror stories where somebody's rolled out a task sequence that's basically a decommissioning task sequence and wiped their entire estate, servers and all. These are little safety nets that basically say, hang on a second, you can only deploy this to certain collections. So specifically on this one, anything that's less than 100, I can obviously go off that one and go for more than 100, but we choose where we want to deploy it and to who we want to deploy it to. So maybe I want to say, well, fine, this can go to all my desktops. I want to make this available rather than just a forced install. When do we want it to happen? Now. We want the user to be able to decide on all the options we want, and that will do me for now as an example. Like Phil mentioned, the user would basically have the Software Center app, and alongside all of their applications, they would have another one that basically says upgrade to Windows 10. I'm probably a little bit too quick in terms of trying to expect it to be there before the policy request is even done. As Phil mentioned, you have the idea of a policy request that happens. So this normally happens automatically. However, I'm a little bit impatient, so I'm just going to say, go and give me everything that I need. And go machine user as well. Give it a second or two. But it will pop up into my gallery alongside the other bits and pieces that we have to basically say, fine, you can now upgrade to Windows 10. I might have a notification set, so I'll have little pop-up messages if I want to, saying this is available. We make it an available one rather than a forced install. Or, as we get a wide adoption and we're just tidying up them stragglers, then we can kind of push it out and make sure it's a forced application install.
Very good. I think that really kind of is just kind of giving you some of the highlights in terms of how we're seeing kind of the Windows 10 and also then the introduction of the management platform to support you both with getting it to your users, but also then the management and support of that in. You know, you've seen there really Configuration Manager is something that was quite keen for Microsoft to bring in. You know, if you're familiar with System Center, Configuration Manager is one of the primary components, but one of many, and it has been the first one that they brought up to the current service branch model, and really that was done, you know, much sooner than the other components, primarily because they needed it to fall in step with Windows 10. So this is really just kind of giving you a bit of an insight, but hopefully that was useful for you. And it's really just hopefully showing some of the capabilities, and of course, you know, happy to go into more detail as separate sessions and everything else. But yes, thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you all.